Hello everyone and welcome to this week's video tutorial on opening theory. Uh, Today this will be a continuation of the unorthodox counters to the central canon. It is based on the book Deception and Countermeasures in Xiangqi written by Master Wenqing and Grandmaster Zhang. So without further ado, let us begin. Central canon, and black develops the horse to protect the central pawn. So far so good. And red continues with h2 plus 3. This would be the norm. And for the second move, black would develop his chariot as a ranked chariot, preparing to cross the palace, and perhaps add pressure to red's left flank. Red would develop his chariot r1 equals to 2, which is normal. So far everything is okay, but for his third move, black would retreat his cannon, c8 -1, and this would be the hallmark of the turtleback cannons. The name is derived because the ancient Chinese felt that black's formation would be something similar to the back of the turtle, and there are also many other names to this opening. Usually, black would continue with c equals to 5, 3 or 1 as his major lines of attack, and these three lines of attack would be similar to not would be similar to the nodding of the phoenix 3 times. Now this is another cultural thing. It represents one way of making Chinese Kung Fu tea, whereby water is poured into the tea with three different techniques. As can be seen, as mentioned earlier, black would usually use this chariot and try to play c8 equals to 5, 3 and 1 to attack and try to concentrate material. Now the advantages would be black would have quite a versatile formation, but because he would move the cannon over here, over to this flank for attack very early on, it would be very easy for black's right flank to become congested. So the development of black's material would also not be as straightforward as the screener's defense, etc. And usually this can result in the loss of tempo because the same piece might be moved more than once in the opening phase. So faced with the turtleback cannons, there are 6 major ways that red can attack. The first would be p5 plus 1, the second would be p3 plus 1, the third would be p7 plus 1, the fourth would be for the riverbank cannon, the fifth would be h8 plus 9, and the sixth variation would be to develop the left horse as a proper horse. Now, the sixth variation is the most complicated one and will be presented in another board on its own. So for this board, we'll deal with the first few variations. In variation 1, red continues to attack from the central file, p5 plus 1. And since red had already decided on his attack, black would counter with c8 equals to 5. Now, red's p5 plus 1 is considered to be an old school method of attack, and black would counter very proactively with c8 equals to 5 for a central cannon of his own. Now, with the cannon on the third rank, black can also move the elephant or even the horses to the central file to consolidate, or even another cannon to consolidate the central file. So red will usually continue c8 equals to 7 so that both horses can be developed from the center. And black would usually counter likewise with h2 plus 3. Now, in this situation, black could also consider capturing the central pawn. So one major line that was given, black would protect the pawn in this manner, and red would immediately target this horse. But black will counter very nicely with p5 plus 1, whereby he would also develop his horse to the central file. And black would gain a very good position. He could be prepared to play h2 plus 3, and the major confrontation would happen along the central file. Black can be satisfied with this situation and he could have an easier time ahead. Now, as can be seen at this point in time, Black would not have moved his chariot, neither had Black, but although Black might lose an elephant, his major pieces were now developed and he would. This is considered to be a successful opening for Black. So h2 plus 3 is now discussed. Red will continue with h7 plus 5 to develop the horse from the central file, p3 plus 1. And Red decided to attack the horse in this manner. Now this was one of the ways that the Red would attack in the ancient times. However, this move is considered as weak, and p7 plus 1 to trade pawns, or r9 plus 1 to develop the chariot is suggested nowadays. So with the c3 plus 5, hc equals to 7, sorry, Black would continue to develop his horse to attack. And as can be seen, Black would have fortified and countered, be prepared to seize the central file by force. So this position is very desirable for Black, and Black can be satisfied by the situation. So this would be variation 1. In variation 2, Red would choose to play p3 plus 1 to develop his horse and limit the development of this Black horse. Black would consolidate his defense with e3 plus 5. Now in the total Black cannons, it is usually more favorable for Black to play e3 plus 5 rather than e7 plus 5, because Black would have the additional option of playing h2 plus 4, or to protect this very important intersection where the chariot might move later on. Black continues with the proper horse and prepares to storm the center again. Now, would it be a good idea for Red to play h3 plus 4? The answer will be no, because Black had already consolidated his central file. So let's see what would happen. Black will continue to attack with c8 equals to 3, and Black will simply ignore the horse and continue to develop his material. So at this point in time, after 6 plies, we can see that Black had already concentrated his material, targeting Red's left flank, and Red would have moved his horse 1, 2, 3 times. Now, Red would be in a dilemma. If he captured the horse, he would have wasted another move, and Black would continue to develop his right flank. So this would not necessarily be a good idea for Red, and that is why the authors advocated h8 plus 7. And since h8 plus 7 was played, Black would continue with p3 plus 1, preparing to attack the horse in this manner. Now another option would be to play c8 equals to 3. This were the given moves. Red would try to develop his left flank. Black would attack the horse. And Black will still be able to put up a fight with this situation. He will be prepared to push the pawn forward. There will also be an additional option of c3 equals to 2 to attack the chariot. So Black will still have his options open, and it will still be too early to decide who would have the upper hand. So Black will still have a very playable game. So c8 equals to 3 is a viable option. Now, if p3 plus 1 were played, Red will usually counter with c8 plus 4. Now, one might wonder, since both the horses were now developed as proper horses, would p5 plus 1 to attack the central file be a good option? Let us see. h2 plus 3 to consolidate the central file. Again, Black would have the option of c8 equals to 5 to strengthen and fortify his central file in preparation for Red's attack. And at this point in time, because of the central cannon, the elephant are protecting the central pawn, and both horses develop as red horses, it will be extremely hard for red to try to attack or to launch an attack along the central file. So red cannot do much about this situation, and black can be considered to have been successful in his opening. So that is why p5 plus 1 is not a good idea, and c8 plus 4 was analyzed in the book. Now c8 plus 4, again, black would try to concentrate material on this flank, preparing to push the pawn, forcing red to play e7 plus 9, so that if the pawn is pushed, the elephant could capture it. Black would take the opportunity to develop his right horse as a proper horse. And at this point in time, we can see that black would have disallowed the chariot to be developed, and both colors would now be attacking one flank. Black will be attacking red's left flank, and red will be doing likewise, attacking black's left flank too. So this would be a we're still too early to decide how the game would go or to whose favor it would be, but black can be considered to have been successful in this opening. The third variation will be p7 plus 1, and we can see that it has become more and more complicated. Okay, black would usually, if p7 plus 1 were played, the cannon would play c8 equals to 3 and again target the elephant and pawn in this same file, and also discourage black from developing, red from developing the horse. If he did, black would first consolidate his defense with e3 plus 5. He should not be in a hurry to play p3 plus 1 because his central file has not been consolidated yet. So let us see. If he did, red would sacrifice his pawn, capture the central pawn, hoping to gain a headhunter cannon. And if red decided to consolidate his defense in this manner, red would now target the pawn that has already moved used up 2 moves. And red would continue to attack the cannon in this manner. Now black will be forced to play p3 plus 4. Now c2 equals to 3 would not be a good idea because red can counter in this manner, threatening to capture the horse, and if it moved away, the cannon would now be in trouble. Let's say if red tried to capture the cannon, after the check, black would be placed in a dilemma, and you still lose material because now red will be attacking the 2 horses at the same time. So this is why c2 equals to 3 cannot be played, and why p3 plus 4 should be played to try to keep the pawn alive. And red will continue to exploit the pawn and play p7, r7 equals to 6. His main idea all along was to try to control this very important line. This will usually force the pawn back. It would not be a good idea to sacrifice the pawn to capture the red central pawn, because the black pawn would have used up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves so early in the game, and red would first trade horses, threatening to capture the chariot so that black would not dare to capture the cannon. And after doing so, the horse will now be developed, and red would have a very powerful formation going on. The horse will be free to attack, and red will have many options in the ensuing game. So that is why p4 plus 5 is not a good idea, and usually black will be forced to move his pawn away. Now if the pawn was sacrificed, black could have lost 10 pi. And once the chariot was on this file and the pawn would return to the third file, red will usually attack with r6 equals to 3, placing black in a serious dilemma. So this cannon would now be threatened by capture of the chariot, and because the chariot had blocked the cannon from protecting this horse would now also be vulnerable. So black would have a hard time trying to deal with this situation, and this is one of the formational weaknesses of the turtleback cannons. So p3 plus 1 is not a good idea. Red would usually continue with h7 plus 6. R9 equals to 4 to develop the chariot and slowly concentrate material targeting this flank. And red would advance his cannon to the riverbank to try to protect the horse. Now, it would not be a good idea to capture the central pawn at this point again, because black had already consolidated his defense. So red could continue. Sorry, black would capture the or trade horses, and black would consolidate his defense. We can see that all 5 major black pieces were now concentrated on this flank, and red will usually protect his cannon in this manner. Doing so would allow red to develop his left chariot as a foul chariot. It would not be a good idea to play e7 plus 5 because black would counter p7 plus 1 to halt the development of the horse. And there's always h2 plus 3, which is a very powerful tactical combination in this situation to chase away the cannon. The cannon will be forced to retreat, and black would gain tempo in the process. So this will be an even situation for both colors, and black can be very satisfied with this situation. So that is why c8 equals to 5 is played in anticipation of h2 plus 3. So, but since the cannon moved away, the red's cannon rank will now be vulnerable, and black could attack with c2 plus 5, forcing the horse to retreat. Protecting it with the chariot would not be a good idea because now one cannon would have pinned 3 of red's major pieces. Again, black would continue h2 plus 3 to gain tempi, forcing the cannon away, and black will start to mount his counter-attack. Now, red will control the pawn rank and develop his other chariot, threatening to checkmate, forcing red to defend. And black's chariots will now have commanded very important lines on the board. Let's say if red tried to mount an attack on the flanks, black would not be bothered or simply ignore it because his defense would be formidable and able to defend against any potential red attacks at the moment. Instead, black would counter aggressively by capturing the central pawn, and both colors will be attacking, but black would be considered to have the advantage in this situation. So h6 plus 5 is not a good idea. So at this point in time, a usual tactic will be to push the pawn, offering to sacrifice it. If red capture the pawn, black would capture the horse. It would not be a good idea to try to develop the horse, or to develop the 7th pawn in this situation in anticipation of h6 plus 4, because if he did, red would simply fortify the central riverbank, and black would have a hard time trying to crack red's defense at the moment. Red would have c5 equals to 6 as a potential play to target the chariot, etc. So p3 plus 1 is played, and red would play c5 equals to 6 to dislodge the black chariot, but black would have none of it and counter very aggressively with c2 equals to 4. Now, offering a trade of material. Obviously, if black wanted to trade material, red would usually not want to trade material and play c8 equals to 9 instead. And black would counter. It would be better for black to counter with c3 equals to 1 to protect the chariot. h2 plus 1 would be a blunder because red would play h6 plus 7, and this will be a fork. This horse will not be attacking the chariot, and the black horse, which is only protected by the cannon. So the red cannon and horse will be attacking this horse, while the horse will also be attacking this chariot, and also the cannon will also be attacking the black chariot. So that is why black would now lose material. So c3 equals to 1 will be the correct move in this situation, and once this happens, red would decide to trade material. Now, would it be a good idea to try something cheeky like h6 plus 5? The answer will be no, because black would have a very powerful counter in c6 equals to 7 to capture the advisor. If, let's say, red played a4 plus 5, this cannon will capture the red chariot to deliver a check, and thus black would have a winning position. So if the king captured the cannon, the black chariot, let's say, the black chariot would capture the cannon, deliver a check, and then capture more material. So red will lose material in this situation, and black would have the upper hand. And the lack of an advisor so early in the game will mean that red would have many problems with his defense. Now, it would not be a good idea for red to play h6 plus 4 either, because if he does, black would play c4 equals to 3 to attack the cannon, and red's attack would have been halted immediately. So red would not be able to make any progress in this situation, and the best move or suggested move would be to simply trade the cannons. So after trading cannons, the chariot will now be attacking the horse, which would force it to move away, or black would be prepared to capture the red cannon. So h6 plus 4, and black would defend or move his horse to the edge file in this manner. Now this will be the most stubborn defense that black can come up with. Now by retreating the horse over here, red would now prevent this horse from further development, because if it tried to go for the elbow horse, the horse will now be covering this intersection, and it will be a trade of horses. Now neither can the horse move over here or here or here. So that is why this horse will be temporarily halted, and red's attack would slow down. So it would not be a good idea to play h7 minus 5, because if he did, black would immediately try to go for the elbow horse attack. Now if after making this move, red would be prepared to capture the cannon and deliver a checkmate. So this would force black to play h2 plus 1, and red will take the opportunity to develop his left chariot. Now at this point in time, we can see that black's right flank was very congested. Black will play p1 plus 1, red will simply trade material. He cannot be clever and try to play r8 plus 8 to attempt a checkmate, because black will simply retreat the horse and still prevent the elbow the checkmate from happening, and thus capture the cannon, etc. And in this situation, it will take red much more effort trying to crack the black defense. So that is why red is usually advocated for red to simply capture the trade material. Red will play p3 plus 1, so sacrificing a pawn to maneuver his horses into attack. And as can be seen at this point in time, black's 2 chariots and 1 cannon are placed in an awkward position. The cannon will be forced to protect this intersection, and the horse cannot move it either. So red would have many possible attacking combinations in the ensuing game, and black would have failed miserably. So that is why retreating the horse would be a very, very bad idea, and black should move his horse h7 minus 9 to the edge file in this manner for defense. Red would now take the opportunity to develop his left chariot, trading cannons. And at this point, although red would have still have the initiative, he would now all the cannons would have been traded off the board, and uh, the red horse would have issues continuing to be developed, while black can slowly take his time to develop his right flank, and black can deal with the situation. This would be a rather drawish situation, and black can be satisfied with this variation. So because of the length of the board, we shall do three variations today. H8 plus 4 and the last variation will be dealt in the next video. So a short summary. Faced with the turtleback cannons, red could attack with p5 plus 1, which black can deal with very easily. p3 plus 1 is another method, but this will lead to a very steadfast game, and black would have his chances, and this would not be very ideal if you were red. Now, third variation, p7 plus 1 is more complicated than the p3 plus 1 variation, but generally speaking, black can still handle red's offense, and this would be a very drawish position. So in the next video, I will go through the hc8 plus 2 and h8 plus 9 variation, and in the third video on the turtleback cannons, we shall go over red playing h8 plus 7. So I hope you've enjoyed this short video tutorial. If you like the work that I've been doing, please subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. Thank you, and have a good weekend ahead.